The room was buzzing with energy. Cameras rolling, lights hot, a crowd watching live. Joe Rogan leaned forward, fire in his eyes. His voice boomed through the studio. "You know what I don't get?" he said. "This constant obsession with race, like everything is racism now. Progressives act like America hasn't improved." A few audience members nodded. Others held their breath. Across from him, Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett sat still, poised. Her hands were folded in her lap. She didn't flinch. Joe continued, louder now. "We've got policies that punish success, reward victimhood, and claim the whole system is built on oppression. Come on, that's not reality. It's politics." People laughed uneasily, and then she moved. "Joe," Jasmine said gently, interrupting. The room went quiet. "I'm going to ask you something. Have you ever had to comfort a black mother who found her son hanging from a tree in a town that never investigated it?" Joe blinked. Cameras zoomed in. You could hear the sound of someone swallowing. "That's not politics," she said. "That's pain." Her voice never rose, but the cold truth in it made everyone sit straighter. And for the first time in the podcast, Joe had nothing to say. Joe shifted in his chair, searching for words, but Jasmine wasn't finished. "I don't need you to agree with me," she said, eyes steady. "But I do need you to hear what it feels like when justice doesn't call you back." A ripple of silence passed through the crowd. She reached slowly into her bag and pulled out a worn photo. A young man in graduation robes, smiling, full of light. "This is Marcus," she said. "His mother called me last year. No one else would. Her son was found dead in a park 2 miles from their home. The police called it suicide within hours. No note, no history, no evidence collected, just case closed." She paused. "They buried him on his birthday." Joe's face softened. The laughter was gone now. The confidence in his posture dulled into reflection. "I know you think people like me exaggerate," she said softly, "but you don't see what we see. You've never had to tell a mother the system doesn't care. There were no buzzwords, no politics, just heartbreak." Joe rubbed the back of his neck. "I didn't know," he finally whispered. "You didn't ask," Jasmine replied. And the silence swallowed the rest. Joe Rogan cleared his throat, shifting again. He reached for his water, but his hand trembled slightly. Jasmine hadn't attacked him. She hadn't yelled. And yet something inside him had cracked. Jasmine leaned forward just a bit. Her voice was still calm, still firm. "I don't hate this country, Joe. I love it. That's why I fight so hard to make it live up to its promise." Joe finally looked up, eyes misting. "I talk for a living," he said. "But you just made me feel something I didn't expect to feel today." The audience was still. The energy had shifted from debate to reflection. "You know," she said gently, "I came on here expecting to be talked over. But I didn't come to win a fight. I came to tell the truth." Joe nodded slowly. "And the truth is," Jasmine continued, "we can't fix what we won't face." Her words hung like fog. In the back row, a man who had chuckled earlier now wiped tears from his cheek. Another, once smirking, sat with his head down. And somewhere deep in Joe's chest, something softened, something real. What came next wasn't outrage. It was something rarer. Listening. Joe finally broke the silence with a shaky laugh. "I didn't mean to sound heartless," he said, eyes scanning the floor. "I just think the media blows things up, makes people feel more divided than they really are." Jasmine nodded, not in agreement, but understanding. "That's fair," she said. "But may I tell you what the media didn't cover?" Joe looked up. 3 years ago," she began, "I visited a mother named Patrice. Her son Darnell was 16, a football star, straight-A student. He went to the corner store for snacks, never came back." She took a breath. Police said he looked suspicious. A plainclothes officer followed him. No body cam, no witness. Shot him in the back. Joe's face dropped. They claimed Darnell reached for something. It was Skittles. The studio fell into a deeper silence. Jasmine continued, her voice barely above a whisper. No coverage, no outrage, just another incident in the system. Joe's jaw clenched. That wasn't in the news. No, she said, because not every tragedy makes the front page, but it still buries a mother. Her words weren't loud, but their weight was undeniable, and the room could feel it. A young producer behind the camera wiped his eyes, trying not to draw attention. Joe noticed. "Are you okay?" he asked. The man nodded slowly. "That could have been my brother," he whispered. Jasmine turned to him. "What's his name?" The producer hesitated. "Jared. He's 17. Just got into Howard." Jasmine smiled softly. "Tell him I'm proud of him." Joe sat back, staring at his hands. "I've always believed in personal responsibility. That if people just followed the rules..." Jasmine cut in gently. "Joe, the rules change depending on your zip code, your skin tone, your last name." She pulled out a printed sheet. "Here's the data. In some cities, black teens are 6 times more likely to be stopped by police, even when doing nothing wrong. And when things go wrong, there's rarely accountability." Joe looked at the numbers. His hand trembled slightly. "It's not about blame," Jasmine said. "It's about awareness, about fixing what's broken before another child doesn't come home." The audience was no longer watching a podcast. They were witnessing truth meet power. And for the first time, many were questioning the world they thought they understood. Even Joe. Especially Joe. Jasmine paused. Her eyes wandered for a moment, landing on an empty stool beside her. "I wish I could have brought someone with me today," she said. Joe looked over confused. She turned to him. Her name was Alicia. She was supposed to be here. A screen behind them lit up with a photo, a young black woman smiling with her toddler. She was a social worker, worked in Dallas, never missed a day on the job, but 2 months ago she was pulled over for a broken taillight. Dash cam malfunctioned. The officer said she reached for something. Jasmine's throat tightened. She was unarmed and she died on the pavement. No one moved, no one breathed. "She was my friend," Jasmine whispered. "She used to laugh at how nervous I was before public hearings." Joe's voice cracked. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to say anything," Jasmine replied. "Just remember the chair beside me should be filled." Alicia's picture stayed on the screen, and Joe, for all his usual boldness, simply bowed his head. In that moment, the podcast wasn't about politics or policies. It was about loss, and the aching space left behind when justice never shows up. Joe stared at the image of Alicia, still glowing on the screen behind Jasmine. He tried to pull the conversation back, his voice quieter now. "I'm just saying, maybe it's not always about race. Maybe it's bad luck, bad policing. Isn't that possible?" Jasmine blinked, not with disbelief, but with weariness. "Let me tell you about a boy named Isaiah." She reached into her folder and pulled out another photo. This time, a 13-year-old, smiling, wearing a hoodie and a backpack. Isaiah was walking home from school, same street he took every day. 2 officers stopped him, said he matched a description. He didn't. She paused. They made him lie on the ground, in the rain. One of them put a knee in his back while they searched his bag. Joe frowned. Did he have something? Jasmine shook her head. Just books, and a sandwich. Joe stared at the image again. The boy looked so small. His mom called me sobbing, not because of bruises, but because he wouldn't go outside for 2 weeks. He thought he did something wrong. No lawsuits, no news, just another child taught to fear the people meant to protect him. A sandwich, and a scar that still hasn't healed. The words came from Jasmine's lips, quiet and raw. It's exhausting, Joe. She wasn't performing. She wasn't preaching. She was revealing. I show up to meetings where people smile in my face, she said. They shake my hand. They call me brilliant in public. But behind closed doors, they roll their eyes when I bring up injustice. They say I'm making it about race. Again. Joe leaned forward. Why keep showing up then? Her eyes met his, unflinching. Because if I stop showing up, someone else never starts. For a moment, Joe saw her not just as a congresswoman, but as a human being carrying more than her share. It's not just the policies, Jasmine said. It's the fatigue of having to prove our pain over and over again, to people who never had to live it. She looked around the room, then back at Joe. You asked why we sound angry sometimes, but we're not angry. We're tired. Joe nodded, slowly, almost like a man unlearning something in real time. Jasmine continued. But I didn't come here tired. I came ready. Because someone out there is watching this. Someone who needs to know they're not crazy for feeling the weight. And that's why she stayed. Joe was quiet for a long time. Then finally, he asked what nobody expected. Do you ever feel scared? The question lingered like a fog. Jasmine didn't answer right away. Then she nodded. More than I want to admit. The crew stopped moving. Even the background hum of the studio equipment seemed to dull. Sometimes I drive home from D.C. and I wonder if I'll make it all the way, she said. Because I've seen what happens when the wrong person doesn't like the fact that I have a voice. She looked down. Her fingers gently tapped the edge of her folder. There are days I leave my office and double-check my tires. Days I don't post where I'm headed next. Not because I'm dramatic, but because being a black woman with a platform has consequences. Joe's face paled. I've never thought about that, he said. I know, Jasmine replied, but I still show up. Because I don't get to just talk about problems. I walk with them. Joe leaned back, visibly moved. The podcast wasn't about opinions anymore. It was about truth. And truth, when spoken without fear, becomes something you can never unhear. Even if it shakes everything you thought you knew. Joe tried to shift the conversation again. But don't you think things are better than they were 50 years ago? Jasmine didn't argue. She nodded slowly. Yes, some things are better. But let me tell you a story from this year. She opened a small notebook and read. March 12th. A fourth-grade class went on a field trip to a public library in Alabama. They were mostly black and Latino kids. It was supposed to be a reading day. She looked up. They got there, and the staff said the kids were too loud. They were 8. The police were called. Joe frowned. Wait, on kids? She nodded. 2 officers showed up, hands on weapons. The librarian said they felt unsafe. A little girl named Ava hid under a table and cried until her teacher could carry her out. Jasmine's voice cracked. And that night, Ava asked her mom if books were only for white people. Joe shut his eyes. Jesus. That wasn't 50 years ago, Jasmine said. That was 4 months ago. Silence hit harder than any headline. And in that moment, even people who came to laugh found themselves swallowing tears instead. Because injustice doesn't ask how old you are. Joe wiped his face. His usual smirk had disappeared. I don't think I've ever been afraid just walking down the street, he muttered. Jasmine didn't gloat. She nodded, almost sad. That's privilege, Joe, and it's not your fault. But it is your responsibility to understand. She pulled up another photo. A young man in running gear, arms out, mid-stride. His name was Elijah, He jogged every evening, same trail, same time. Neighbors knew him, waved to him. Her eyes narrowed. One day, a woman called 911, said he didn't look like he belonged in that neighborhood. Jasmine let that hang a moment. 2 officers stopped him. He smiled, told them he was just finishing his run. One said he looked jumpy. Within 3 minutes, Elijah was handcuffed. He asked why. They said he was resisting. They tased him. The room froze. He hit his head when he fell. He never woke up. Joe's voice was barely audible. I never heard about that. Jasmine's reply was gentle, but crushing. Most people didn't, because some lives don't trend. Joe stared at the photo, and for the first time his eyes betrayed him. They filled with anger, with regret, with something he hadn't expected to feel today, grief. The moment caught everyone off guard. Joe, the man known for grit and bravado, wiped a tear, not with embarrassment, but with honesty. I used to think people like you were exaggerating, he said softly. But these stories, they're real. They're so real. Jasmine didn't speak right away. She gave him space, gave the room space, and then she said something no one expected. I didn't come here to change your mind, Joe. I came because someone watching this needs to see a man like you feel this. Joe looked at her. They need to know they're not crazy, she continued. They need to see someone finally listen. The producer we met earlier, Jared's brother, had stepped away to cry. Quietly, off camera. And the audience in the studio? Many now had tears rolling down their faces too, not because of a political position, but because pain has a way of unlocking truth. And truth, when spoken by someone who has lived it, becomes impossible to ignore. Joe looked up. What do I do now? Jasmine answered with a soft smile. Don't just talk about change. She paused. Be it. And just like that, the podcast, once fire and fury, became something holy. Joe was still processing Jasmine's last words when a staff member handed him a note. It had been passed forward from someone in the back row. He read it silently, then turned to the audience. Is Darnell's father here? A man stood slowly. His eyes were heavy, his shoulders low. Joe gestured gently. Do you want to say something? The man walked to the mic. The studio was dead silent. My name is Reggie Carter. My son Darnell was the one she told you all about. The Skittles. The suicide. His voice cracked, but he kept speaking. That boy was my whole heart. Every night I used to sit on the porch just to watch him come home safe. One night, he didn't. Reggie looked at Jasmine, then back to Joe. You said earlier, it's not always about race, but I buried my child while the whole town turned away. The mayor never called. The police never apologized. He took a breath. You don't know silence until you're screaming, and no one hears you. A single tear fell from Joe's face. Reggie stepped back, but his words stayed hanging in the air. It wasn't a podcast anymore. It was a reckoning. Joe wiped his eyes with the sleeve of his sweatshirt. He looked around the studio, then at Jasmine, then at the audience. I've had people walk off this show before, he said. I've had shouting matches, debates, even fights. He paused. But I've never had to sit here and realize I've been part of the problem. No one expected those words. Joe turned to Jasmine. I never meant harm, but meaning well doesn't fix what's broken. I see that now. Jasmine didn't gloat. She simply nodded. I'm not asking for guilt, she said. I'm asking for growth. Joe turned toward the camera, the millions watching. I've said things in the past I thought were keeping it real. But maybe real is sitting with someone's pain and not trying to argue it away. He looked at Reggie in the audience. I'm sorry. Reggie nodded once. That's a start. A few sniffles broke the silence. Grown men wiping their faces, women clutching their chests. Jasmine placed her hand gently over her heart. Joe looked shaken, but lighter. Honest. For once, the world wasn't watching a man defend his platform. They were watching him open it. And something deeper than a podcast began to take root. Jasmine leaned into the mic, her voice steady, eyes glistening. I've been called names on live TV, threatened, mocked. I've walked into rooms where people smiled at me, then schemed behind my back. And I've lost people I love to systems that still don't care. She paused. Her hand briefly trembled, then stilled. And still, I stay. The audience leaned in. I stay because of a girl named Brielle. She's 12. She wrote me a letter last year. Said her classmates said she was too black to be president. Jasmine reached into her folder and pulled out a child's drawing. A little girl in a red blazer, standing on a stage, speaking to a crowd. She said, Congresswoman Crockett, I want to be like you. But sometimes I feel like no one sees me. Her voice cracked for the first time. That's why I stay. The camera panned the room. No one looked away. Everyone felt her now. I don't speak to win arguments, Jasmine said softly. I speak so little girls like Brielle know they're not invisible, so they know they matter. She folded the drawing gently, and in that moment, hearts broke and healed all at once. When the cameras went to a break, the room didn't move. No one reached for their phones. No one made a sound. Joe turned to Jasmine. You didn't come here to debate. You came here to teach. She gave a gentle smile. Not even to teach, Joe. Just to tell the truth. Whether people are ready for it or not. Joe extended his hand. It wasn't performative. It was quiet, respectful. Jasmine looked at it for a second. Then she reached out and shook it. The audience clapped, not the loud kind, but the slow, swelling kind. A kind that grows from inside your chest before it reaches your hands. Joe turned to the crowd. What just happened here? This is what the world needs more of. Jasmine looked at him, warmth in her eyes. Not everyone will listen like you did, but maybe someone will. Joe nodded. Let's give them a reason to. They weren't opponents anymore. They were humans, standing in the same storm. And for once, the roof held. It didn't leak. It didn't collapse. It held. And under it, something sacred happened. Not agreement, but understanding. And that was enough to start something new. As the studio emptied out and lights dimmed, a small figure waited by the exit. Jasmine spotted her first. Brielle? The 12-year-old stepped forward, her red blazer slightly oversized, eyes wide with emotion. Her mother stood behind her, holding back tears. I saw the live stream, Brielle said, her voice shaking. And I wanted to tell you. Thank you. Jasmine knelt so their eyes were level. You didn't have to come all this way. I had to, Brielle whispered. Because I needed to see someone who looked like me, who didn't back down. Jasmine reached into her folder and pulled out the same drawing Brielle had sent her, now laminated. I carry it everywhere, she said softly. Brielle began to cry. Jasmine opened her arms, and the little girl rushed into them. Joe watched from a few steps away. He wiped his face again. I've had champions on this show, he said quietly. UFC fighters, war heroes. He looked at Jasmine, then at Brielle. But I've never seen courage like this. A hug, a child's tears, a congresswoman's steady embrace, and an old studio that for once held something too big for words. Hope. The episode ended without flashy music, no jokes, no sponsors, just Joe and Jasmine side by side. Joe looked directly into the camera. If you came here today expecting a fight, you got something better. You got truth. Jasmine added. And if you're hurting, if you've ever felt ignored, erased, or unheard, please know this. You matter. Your story matters. Joe turned to her. I thought I was coming to defend my views, but what I got was a lesson in listening. Jasmine nodded. That's how change begins, not with shouting, but with stillness. A final image filled the screen. Alicia's empty chair, Darnell's photo, Isaiah's backpack, Brielle's red blazer, then black, and in white letters, one voice, one interruption, one moment of truth. If this conversation touched your heart, don't scroll away. Tell us in the comments. What truth did you need to hear today? Like this video if it made you feel something. Subscribe if you believe in the power of honest voices. Share this with someone who's never been heard. Because sometimes the deepest change begins with simply listening, and one calm voice can change the whole world.